Okay, we do have a quorum. We have 6 members here. We'll go ahead and get started. 2 of our members I know are trying to get something to eat, so they'll be here shortly. I call to order the September 13th Comprehensive Master Plan Advisory Committee meeting. Like I said, oh, there they are right there.
Two in hand.
They did something to this. Just one housekeeping type of thing here before we approve the agenda. Unfortunately, Patricia McCarthy has resigned from the committee due to a health reason. So we will be looking out there for a 9th member. So I kind of throw that out to the committee. We have the list of the original people that are out there. Do we want to go back to those original people, or do we want to just put it out for an open type of solicitation again?
Can't you do both?
Oh, I mean, yeah, type of stuff there. So, but before I put anything out, just wanted to see if there's any qualms. If we just want to focus in on people originally, or just basically say if you've already put an application in, you just tell us you want to be reconsidered, and if you're someone new, you can put an application in. Okay, so that's what we'll do.
You got to redo the interview committee again?
No, we're not. No, we'll go through that whole process. We'll go how the interview committee was set up that way because there was no committee to start with, so we have a committee there. So. Okay, second item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the agenda? Okay, all those in favor of the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, third item on the agenda is approve the August 9th, 2019 minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on any of those minutes? Our diligent scribe there works hard on that. We appreciate that, Tom, so thank you. All those in favor of the minutes as published, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, Buddy, board liaison report.
Nothing really to the report except be sure and come to the board meeting next Wednesday. It'll be standing room only. A lot of stuff to cover. And last night we had and Stephanie's going to touch on that, but we had a huge meeting at the Coronado Center about the Balboa Golf Course and Clubhouse, and I see she's going to present that.
Yep.
So a lot going on.
Okay, good. Thank you, Buddy. Stephanie, anything from the staff, please?
Only that I passed out the Balanced Market Barometer, which is just an interesting read, and I'll want to read from you one thing from that, and then also a trend that we're seeing in the National Golf Foundation. So we get this publication as well each month, and so I thought this was good. So while on-course participation rounds for the year declined 4.8% from 2017 to 434 million rounds, and the National Golf Foundation attributed that drop to unfavorable weather conditions. So it's a trend across the entire country. But albeit there was some decrease, there was also for the first time in 14 years an uptick in a different round category. So there's some positives that are coming out of the golf industry overall, which is good. And I'm happy to share with that if you like. And then the other thing is out of that market barometer, Del Webb, which we all know is one of our major competitors out there across the country, and I'll just read to you that they're planning to open 9 new communities over the next 18 months or so. I'm sure this is interesting to Pam with the marketing group. In Florida, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Nevada, North Carolina, and Virginia. And the company is reportedly pivoting to a smaller footprint in locations that are closer to city centers as older adults are increasingly drawn to intergenerational living in walkable locations. An estimated 25% of Del Webb residents are still working in some capacity, and those are all 55 and over communities, right, where we're not, and 10% are still working full-time. So 35% of the people in the over 55 plus market moving into Del Webb are actually still working in some capacity, which is a pretty interesting change. So share that stuff. It's in your, I gave you, it's in that.
It's in this packet?
Good, yeah, thank you.
Okay.
In this packet?
Yeah, it's in there.
Yes.
If you read that.
Homework, okay.
Anything else?
That's it.
Any questions and stuff? Okay. Item 6, action items. First one was about goals, and we'll talk about that in one of our old business items. Communication Subcommittee, out there, FAQs for posting. Any updates that we want to give on that, on the FAQ?
I think we need to update the date because we didn't make the 8:30 date, so
Okay.
you want to try for,
Just put it 9:30. We'll give you 2 weeks. You think the FAQs will be done in 2 weeks?
I would suggest 10:15 because I'm going to be,
You're going to go.
I'm going to be gone for some of that. I think, is that okay with you?
Okay. Okay. Cam's looking like, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, item 3, as far as the request of the POA board to put the agenda or CPAC update at the October meeting, that needs to be changed to November. The board has asked us to slip to November for our first presentation. Basically, they're going to be a little busy in October, and it could be a long board meeting, and we could just make it even longer. So that one we slipped there. And then you can slip the action item 4 there to whatever the board meeting is in November. Whatever that date is.
Third Wednesday.
Whatever third Wednesday is. So. Okay, as far as item 7, some of the old business, as far as a communication moment, it's always interesting reading the internet. It's always interesting reading Nextdoor. A couple of people are, pants that go on the print. There was an interesting post, and it's been a couple months ago, but I saved this one for a little bit. And the post was talked about, we need a strategic plan for the village. And I sat there and go, shoot, and we need to be creative. I mean, this was a post, and people start jumping on this, talking about strategic plan. And I'll be very honest with you, folks, you probably can't get any more strategic than this, and you can't get any more creative than this has gotten. And some of the creativity has probably challenged us out there. So I just throw that out to folks to say, I don't know what else you're thinking. This is pretty strategic type of thoughts there. And I will kind of tie this into, because Rolland and I went and had a meeting with Tom Blackman. And we said, no, sit down, Tom. We spent, 3 hours with Tom?
Yeah.
So talking about that. And Tom actually has his plan out there. Okay, understand. And he's got some good points out there. But the thing I have a concern, or just kind of is my communication moment to everybody, is Tom has some good tactical things to do that potentially could be done. But I would use as a problem, we did some tactical stuff like that back in the 2012 timeframe, and we got burned. And I will use one example of one really tactical thing on POA lots. We went out there and sold POA lots for $1,000, and then we sold them for $750, and we sold them for $500. And that was Scott Randall's way of trying to unload some inventory, and Roy came back and burned us. So I just kind of throw that out there as kind of have our discussion as we work our way through this, that sometimes what looks good immediate as a tactical thing, where does it fit in sometimes? And that really has still been a challenge for us. So any kind of questions on that? But that's just, there's pieces of this plan that people like, there's many pieces people don't like, but this is a pretty strategic plan in my mind. And that comes from a guy who wrote 4 different strategic plans in the Air Force, and
One here.
What's that?
And one here.
And one here. This is more strategic than the one that we have here. So I just kind of throw that out as we talk about strategic plan. We got a strategic plan, but we have a lot. It works our way down, and some of those tactical pieces can be fit into the strategic plan. So.
I would just remind people, so the strategic plan that you helped author in 2013? 2010. That strategic plan, one of the strategies was to create a comprehensive master plan. So that came out of the 2010 strategic plan that was created by a group of property owners.
And Rolland was out there as part of that. So
yeah, it's been a long time in the making.
But that was my communication moment that I wanted to kind of just say, let's think about that. So, okay, item B, language and terminology. Nikki, it's yours.
All of y'all should have gotten the Importance of Language handout. And you read it?
You didn't read it?
You
We
didn't
got
get
it, we got it
It was-
two sessions ago.
2 sessions ago, so we had it as a homework assignment. The reason why I did that is that word choice can be very, very important when we're having discussions, and being an advisory committee and focusing in on the CMP as we are, you could take a look at the exact same thing and get 2, 3, 4, 5, however many interpretations on it. And one of our goals has to be trying to clarify, not to confuse. And so I think it was just a good, important reminder that we need to do that. So I put together this documentation, and what I did was, wherever possible, I tried to actually pull from examples from the CMP so that you could see, sometimes there were positive examples, but many times there were negative examples in terms of this is not how you'd want to do it, and we can see how that could promote misunderstanding instead of understanding. So please do make a point of reading this. Is it appropriate? Do I need to do it here? I mean, or do you just take it as an action item, and if there's something you want to discuss?
I think you just take it as another action item. If you have any questions, ask.
Okay.
And the unfortunate part is Patricia was the one who was really excited about the terminology, and unfortunately Patricia had to leave us, so.
Can I get a copy of that?
No, absolutely. You can have, I have this printout right here. I can give it to you right now. But let's see, there's just a handful of those. Be specific, not vague. Be concise, not verbose. Use familiar language. Use precise and clear language. Use of constructive language, and make sure that the word choice you use is appropriate for that situation and that message. That's basically the nuts and bolts of what it comes down to. All right? You want to pass this around to Buddy?
Okay. Stephanie, CMP implementation table update.
You're still up.
Oh, God, I tried to skip that one. Okay. CMPAC goals. I have inputs from Nikki and Tom, and as far as myself, I have a couple that we want to place as goals. First of all, one of our goals needs to go back in and do a thorough review of the implementation tables. So, what type, we're looking for 2020 goals. Let's step back and say that, we're going to be expected to provide recommendations in April. And that's the second one of our goal is to provide our specific recommendations on CMP recommendations in April. So those are the two things I threw out there. When would you feel comfortable us having our implementation table reviews done? Because you all have your recommendations have been handed out based on your liaison roles and your the subcommittee roles. So any thoughts on that? When we think, and Stephanie started, when do you think we might get the implementation tables?
Now you are on my.
Now I'm moving it right back because we're trying to set our goal for 2020.
Yeah. So we've been 100% focused on the budget, and the main table in there that impacts the budget, of course, is the O&M tables. And you'll get a copy of that soon because that's in the budget packet,
Okay.
and it's been completely revised. So it's laid out differently. It's much more inclusive information-wise, and we'll get much more in-depth involved in implementation tables as soon as the budget is approved. Well, actually now, the real work of the budget is over. We put it in the hands of the board. So I would say maybe by the end of October, we should have some sort of draft.
So if we receive, say, 31 October, our implementation tables, when do people feel comfortable having their reviews done? Would people say January, end of January? Does that sound like a potential?
What are we reviewing them for?
Well, review them for asking the questions, reviewing them with their committees out there so they understand what we're looking at.
Yeah, and making sure we've got the right ones in the right subcommittee.
Yeah, that's to be the other thing too. And because there's going to be, I hate to say this, Pam, you picked up a few that are going to be handed to you from land use today.
Marketing.
And Murray, I have a couple more for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Okay, so one of our first goals would be to have the implementation tables reviewed by 31 January. That sound good? And then that would support us providing specific recommendations on Recommendation on specific CMP recommendations, it's hard saying recommendations on CMP recommendations, having them done in April, because those would go to the staff in April. Okay, so we'll pick a date in April, okay?
When you say January 31st, are you talking about we should send them to Nikki or to you or both, or, you know?
Send them to, we'll turn them in, and then we'll publicize them out to the rest of the committee too.
Okay.
I own the spreadsheet, so I'll be
Yeah.
updating the spreadsheet and sharing that with you.
So by January 31st, by email,
Yeah.
and we'll work from there?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we got to start on that in a couple of committees this morning.
Yeah, and I think once we get the real updated, or the updated implementation tables, we get those by the end of October, then they give us basically November, because, you know, December's like anything else. You start hanging Christmas lights and things don't get done until after that. So. But that'll get us in January, and then give us time to work through the recommendations that we want to send forward to the POA staff as they start the budget process in April.
So just one question for Stephanie. So by end of October, we'll receive the tables updated with updated dates and staff or other assignments? Is that what we can
That is,
expect to receive?
I'm committed to now. I mean, I definitely need to go back and visit with Leslie, make sure she feels comfortable with my timeline that I was committed to, but that's what I feel pretty good about
Yeah,
that.
end of January.
Yes.
Okay. then.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to give us a couple months to allow us to look at those tables and then get ready to start developing what type of words we want to provide as far as our advice on those recommendations. Okay? So there's two goals there. Nikki, you had a goal of updating the website pages regarding the CMP and the CPAC by January 1st, 2020. Still.
We need an update on that one too, because I know that there's some work that staff is doing, and we wanted to, which one? We put together the website, the site map and things like that.
We're wanting to get that marketing position filled. Is
And it's being held up on that?
Well, yes, because that's going to change a lot within that whole structure.
So that may not be January 1, that could be,
Well, that position's pretty close to being filled, I think. The interviews are, they're in their second round, so.
So keep it January 1 for now, is it?
until we know otherwise, okay?
Okay. Your next one was SWOT analysis.
Our charter says that we will do one per quarter, so we started basically at the end of the first quarter, so we only have to do 3 this year.
Okay.
We have done 2, we need one more for this year.
Okay. And then conduct a strategic review of the 2020 proposed budget by November 1st. Okay. Of 2020.
Excuse me.
That'd be the 2021 budget, right? On that one?
Probably.
Yeah, because next year we're working on the 2020.
So it's really the 2021 budget by that date, not the
By
20.
November 1st of 2020, because these are 2020
Right.
goals.
Will that not already be approved?
That will be really approved of the budget.
Well, that's why this one, after this meeting, we'll make our first kind of overarching strategic, that's what we're going to talk about in new business. So maybe we want to back that one up to,
Well, that's actually why those implementation tables, we can get them to you, and you guys can then begin to use that along with the other
Yeah.
updated O&M tables to formulate your recommendations for us to start budgeting in April
Yeah.
of 2020 for 2021.
Yeah, it sounds
Well-
like an April thing,
well, no,
or May.
Well, not November, but earlier is what you're thinking?
The
Well,
20
November, the board
It's
ends
approved.
up doing the
2021
so-
budget
so-
will
I would
in
say,
October.
I would
Okay.
say September. This strategic kind of, this is, I view this one as, we provide the tactical level advice in April for you guys. And then before the budget comes out, when you guys get it, we kind of look at it and just say strategically, yes, they did this, this, and that. I'm saying it's more of the broad brush then, to kind of say, yes, I would say,
See what made it in.
what made it in and what didn't
the
make it
packet.
in, to kind of stuff like that, so we could report out. And Buddy, correct me if I mean, you see what we're trying to do is, here's our advice, here's what advice,
You took.
you took. Yeah, basically what advice you took. And, here's what it looked, and here's, that makes sense, that doesn't make sense, type of stuff there. So that we actually are communicating something every 6 weeks, roll in, say October. I would bring change and make them 1 October. We provided it by 1 October, so the board would have it just prior to going into their deliberations, saying that, the CMP committee ran this against the CMP, and here's what is supported. Some of the stuff that we'll talk about in the proposed motions later on here. So trying to get us on that cycle. Does that make sense? Okay. So why don't we change that to 1 October?
I was thinking end of September, but yeah.
And then 4 was establish a CMP organization structure to support committee operations.
I think we're fairly close, but I think we're still kind of sizing it to see if it's working. And
Why don't we say review CMP organization structure and how they're supporting committee operations? Why don't we put like an end of February?
Keep this for information, if any of y'all wanted to make it, the different divisions, Stephanie and all of them will present their budget on 2 days, October 1st from 1 to 5 and October 2nd from 1 to 5. And that will be the 2020 budget. And it's open to the public to attend.
So, folks,
They're going to publish a kind of agenda, what's covered what days sometime.
I don't have a clue.
I'm sure she
That's
will.
staff,
Usually they put a black
staff's
eye.
handling that.
Oh, did you say Steph or staff?
Staff.
Good, staff.
Staff is staff, whatever.
Yeah. I'll make sure, it does, they always put
They
a
put it
list
on.
of who's presenting at what time.
Goals there.
I added the FAQs. Even if we don't hit the website, adding the CMP FAQs to the website by the year end.
Okay, so why don't we say 1 January, have FAQs there, so that puts us in 2020 goals.
Because I think we can get them up there, even if the website isn't changed. We can find a way to add them
Okay.
somewhere. That makes sense.
Okay, so we got some goals there to publish for 2020. Tom, you'd sent in a goal or potential goal on owner engagement. Do you want to still have us have a goal on owner engagement?
Well, I mean, I read the Village Voice about the communication
Okay,
committee, and I think that covers it.
that covers it, okay. And then about priorities. I'm just reading what I asked.
Yeah, I know. I'm kind of rethinking that. I guess maybe I'm probably a little bit unclear as to the function of this committee as far as recommending priorities with respect to the CMP. I know that a lot of that will probably be implicit in a April update, but I think to a great degree, a lot of priorities are simply set by staff.
Well, it should be set,
Leslie, and then-
hopefully by the 2020 goals and objectives, because the board did it this year, set the enterprise goals and work down through the objectives
Yeah.
out there, so hopefully you guys will be doing that again. So that's what we should be grading ourselves against then. So maybe we have, our objective is to ensure that we, align with
Yeah.
them.
I mean, I think that's probably how it's going to work.
Okay.
So what did that actually end up being?
It's going to be aligning, any of our CMP advice is aligned to support enterprise goals type of stuff there.
By the pillars?
Well, whatever they decide on next year. I mean, I assume they might, they might have pillars again, but we don't know. They could come out and change their enterprise goals out there. Okay. Does anybody else have any goals or objectives that they just didn't send in they think we need to be covering in 2020? Okay. With that, Stephanie, implementation tables, you kind of talked about that.
Yeah, I
Okay.
really don't think that's that. I'll verify that date, like I said, with.
time you got all the dates and stuff, we'll make sure we get
I
them all.
probably have to talk to you about that.
Okay, item E, project management update. Nikki and Rolland.
Want you to review it?
Yeah.
Are you okay with it?
Yes, I only saw it for a couple of minutes.
Yes, okay. Rolland and I have been meeting from a project management perspective. We still feel like this is a good approach for us to take in order to really understand the dependencies for the work, and so we can really help with the prioritization and make sure we're focusing on things that we need to. Because I am highly suspect that there is going to be a lot of dependencies that are going to trip us up if we don't catch them. And I want to make sure that we catch them so that we do things in the right order, because financially, time, resources, whatever resources you want to talk about, we can, if we do it right the first time, we won't spend the money and the people and the time doing it right the second time. So we want to make sure we get it right.
Nikki, could you give us an example?
Of what?
Well, let me use an example that we had today coming out of our subcommittee meetings. We start looking at some of these recommendations that were under growth and community development and governance economic development. They start saying, hey, this needs to be lumped together. There's 4 or 5 things that need to kind of be lumped together because they're all dependent on each other. So that's what you, I mean, we saw the perfect thing today, and you may see some in marketing say, we got to do 1, 2, and 5 first before we get to 3, and that takes us to 4.
Part of our dialogue was that we were just trying to do a real quick read through, is this a short-term, long-term, or mid-term type of time frame where we're looking at? And the one that we were looking at, and I can't remember which one it was, but it was, that's long-term. I said, whoa, whoa, whoa. That actually may be long-term, but we have to set the groundwork for it now, which makes certain aspects of it short-term that we have to do from a communication and all that kind of stuff that we have to do in order for us to meet the long-term. So just those little relationships that you start thinking about, it really gets kind of crazy. So Rolland and I got together, we went through every single one of the recommendations, and we treated it as if it was a brand new project that we got today. It hasn't been working at all, nothing's been done, because you really don't have any hard information about what has and has not been done. But regardless of whether work has been done or will be done in the future, there are certain fundamental dependencies that you have to kind of outline and make sure you get step 1 in the right order. So our first go at it was, let's take all of them and kind of group them together in terms of portfolios. So right now we have identified 6 portfolios. And from a project management terminology point of view, a portfolio is a group of projects or programs, work efforts that are related to each other that kind of work together. So it makes sense to group them together. And it can be, and we try to align it towards strategic goals, or in our case, the pillars. What is maintaining value pillar? What is the service gap pillar? What are some of the things related to innovation, new development types of things? We grouped them together. In addition to those, there's a group of them that's just operationally, from a business point of view, these things have to get straightened up so we can support everything else that we want to do from that point forward. We also came up with another one that is around governance, because that's a stepping stone that we have to make sure that we have everything in the place that needs to be in order for us to take the direction we want to be. So if it goes this way, we go that way. If it lands on this, then we have to make a left turn somewhere. And then the last one that we had is risk management. There are several things that are around legal risk, just fire risk, fire safety. We live in a forest, so that's a major risk here. And we need to control the water and avoid things like flooding, and I'm sure Murray would have something to say about that. So all of that, we put under that. So we have taken that. We have gone from, how many recommendations on it?
271.
271. Well, we've identified over 250 line items just related to that initial grouping, and that's within a portfolio, which goes down to the next level of the project or program. If you just assume a project, a small project, 1,000 activities, 2,000 activities, you just get to this order of magnitude huge that we have to get our arms around. I mean, if you take 250 projects and put even the smallest estimate of 1,000 hours, we're already to 250,000.
So you get all that time, don't you, Pam?
This is not something that's going to be happening in the next year. This is a plan that is for the next 30 years. And I think that that's important that we recognize as well, that as we go through this and develop dependencies, we'll take into consideration what are the short-term wants, what are the midterm wants, and that's one of the pieces that will go together as we kind of lay this out. But we've only taken the first step, and that's where we are now.
Let me jump in because I see a couple of blank think of it as interdependencies, that these are things that interlock with others. Something that happens at the lakes and the lake security is also going to be affected possibly by ambulance, police, maybe fire rescue. That's the problem that we're dealing with, and it's a whole lot bigger than just the
And
complex. And our job is to give advice, see these things, and we're trying to organize them so that we don't waste our money and our time. And I'm not talking about ours as much as the POA money.
So that's where we are right now, and we'll keep on plugging along.
Any questions? More to come on that.
We're just not in a position to publish right now because
No,
we're still.
not even close.
Good work, though.
We're working on it, plugging away.
Okay, Pam, the one subcommittee that's out there been plugging away. Give us an update on marketing.
Okay, let's see, we've had 2 monthly meetings so far. We have another one next week. And what we're finishing up now is building that foundation of information, which we were required to do by the charter. So we have been working to understand the past marketing efforts that have been done over the last 50 years. So there was a lot of marketing going on, but then relating what was done and how successful it was to the demographic that we're looking at today, marketing to, which is very different than the demographic was 25 years ago or 40 years ago. So we're just completing that process. We have one more piece to go yet, and that is to see the current marketing pieces that have been done up until right now today. And then once we finish that, then we can start working toward a marketing, looking at the pieces of a marketing plan and looking at recommendations that will be made to the CMP in the near future.
Okay. Any questions of what's going on? I mean, they've been doing a lot of yeoman work, trying to nug their way through all this information and get, moving forward there. So I know it's been a lot of.
Keith, there might be one thing they ought to look at. So much of the marketing that we've used before failed. Why go back and go through all of that?
Well, I think it's.
I think what we're looking for is what do they recommend we do from now?
Well, I think they were just trying to figure out what worked and what didn't work, and so as they make their advice,
Huh?
they as they
Why it failed.
yeah, why it failed. Why did
There's certain things that could have caused it to fail, but you could tweak one little thing, so I think.
But that's kind of the hard part was learning, getting everybody up to speed because Buddy, remember what you said in some of those first marketing meetings there, and people wanted to immediately jump to the how, and it was like, well, wait a minute here, you can't jump to the how. Let's learn what because some of that how, and I'll be very honest, a couple of those how things, and I think we really saw it a couple times in the interviews during the marketing for the committee there. People wanted to tell us how, and we kind of said, well, your how has failed in the past. And so we had to meet the 7 people had to get together to make sure they all are on the same level or same type of thing. I think that's what they've been doing.
Yeah.
It's really been, here's how.
Well, and there's
here's
more-
what the previous hows, what failed and what was successful, so they can build a plan.
I have asked Leslie and Jamie to clarify so they understand what their roles are. In other words, you've got a subcommittee under you. We've got Jamie, who is now over marketing, and they're bringing in a marketing manager. So there seems to be a little confusion of who does what. And that, I'm asking if that all get together. Okay?
Well, I think Jamie's been involved in this quite a bit.
Right, she has,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying that there's still a little confusion.
Okay.
Okay?
Yours. And to add to yours, since I have 10 minutes that I can do this,
You can make it
it's
shorter.
not only,
You can make it shorter.
I'm going to take every second of that. No, the only other thing I wanted to say was that it's not just understanding the marketing that has been done up until now, but it's also understanding what is our demographic right now and what do they look like? Because the things that are of interest to the generation and the people that we will be marketing to over the next few years, the things that are of interest to them really weren't of interest to the people 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So it's very important that we understand what those generational differences are, and also basic things like how do they prefer to communicate? How do they want to hear information? So it's taking the past and using that to build, but then also clearly understanding the present and how that impacts what was done in the past as being useful. I didn't take 10 minutes.
I'm all for being back in Rogers by 6.
Yeah, we're going to drag this on.
Get right to the point, Jody.
I'm head of the table too this time.
You are? We got about 30 minutes.
Okay. Okay, website update. I think we've already talked about the website. We've got to go out there. Okay, now the item G there, the November POA board presentation. Now, we will recap what the status is on marketing. We'll recap some of the stuff we're going to talk about today. We'll talk about our SWOT analysis that we've previously done. We'll talk about coming up with deferred maintenance. So if there's something else you think that you want encapsulated when this presentation goes to the board, because the board, the board only knows what Buddy tells them, and Buddy doesn't talk to them very much about CMP. So he's busy with other things. But please, if there's something you think is important that we need to get to the board, and some of you go to board meetings, some of you are away, so you don't get the experience.
We have YouTube, so.
Yeah. You don't get the experience board meetings, but if there's something you feel is important, that's what I'm kind of looking at capturing now for our November presentation. And Buddy, is there something you think the board needs, please let me know that we can, but we just want to kind of give them an update, where we've been and how we stand and stuff like that. So. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and work on some of the new business before we take our break, because we're moving along pretty good here. Item 9A, next SWOT analysis. We've done a SWOT on CMP. We did a SWOT on kind of marketing, a piece of the marketing with. Anybody have thoughts on what we need to have our next, our November SWOT on?
The village.
The village? In general? Okay. Thoughts on that?
More information, please.
What are the village's strengths
Figure out what
today?
product she's selling, I think.
Yeah, she's trying to ask for help. What are you selling? What is marketing going to be selling? Or should be selling?
I think it's the basic overall strengths when you talk about the village. What does that mean to people outside? What does that mean to people inside? And as we go forward, what is the village going to represent?
Okay. And then how do we tie that back? Because then we use that as what our strengths and weaknesses as we look at potential recommendations from
and the communication part. I think that's really important for the communication part too. For understanding how we communicate better with the villagers, with the residents.
Well, and just on a communication basis, I mean, we keep on talking about how we have to get the message out, but we don't really know what preferences they have. We have many channels where they could, but just because we send a message out there does not mean it was received.
Yep. Some people listen to KVRE, some people read The Voice, some people use social media.
Some people have no computer.
Some people
They
have
want
no
it in the
computer.
mail.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about a SWOT analysis on the village at large, if you will, of just the community itself, are you talking about like how do we identify what is our competitive advantage or where do we lack? Is that what you're talking about a bit? Like, is that kind of where you're going with that? What are we good at? What are we not so good at?
Yep.
How do we compete with? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can, say here's our, what are some of our strengths
Right.
out there, and here's some of our weaknesses.
Just to help identify where we need to beef up some energy and where we, right?
Yeah,
Where we need to focus our
you can
attention.
look at one of our weaknesses. It will always, no matter how well we do, communications is always seems to be a weakness because we have so many different sources, and it's. Why do we? You publish it, you do all this other stuff. How do we, fix that? Probably never. I mean, it's not only the village, but it's we look at it as a potential weakness out there.
I'm okay with that. You guys
Okay,
have any
everybody,
thoughts?
so November, we're reminded in October meeting, but November SWAT will be on the village, so we'll take about 20 minutes to do a village SWAT in November. And that'll prep us for making, the recommendation, stuff like that. Okay. You got the motions, I got the actual paperwork here to hand to them.
So I made 2 copies for each one for him, one for you.
Well, we'll give those to Tom, but I wanted everybody, in case they didn't get one. Make sure. Has all 3 of them together.
Okay,
That's
all right.
For you.
Okay, everybody get one? Tom, get one.
And Tom, I made them individually on the form so that you
Yeah,
can.
you'll have one.
We can cut it short.
Yeah, we need one more.
We need one more.
I can share it, go ahead.
Okay, item B, and I sent this out to you a week and a half ago, and I sent you out and kind of said, this is setting a kind of a foundation of where we want to start. And it's more of us, and I purposely titled it the CMPAC Strategic Budget Philosophy for the 2020 HSV budget cycle. Because we're not down in the weeds, we're not down there, we don't have the implementation tables. But do we need to have a starting point right now? And that's what I look at this as a starting point of our committee. And this would be, we started getting it out here, and this kind of ties into one of the potential goals that we talked about for next year as the budget comes out is, we do a strategic, a review. And I basically said there, in lieu of the advice of any specific CMP recommendations, the CMPAC states the following strategic budget philosophy for this budget cycle. It's not recommendations, it's not priorities, it's a philosophy. And we start with a philosophy now as our committee, and we work through this philosophy. As we get more knowledge, as we start dealing more with the CMP, we start getting more information on specific recommendations, then we can be a little more specific. That's why when you look at kind of the philosophy there of, the first item is maintain, repair, or modernize existing HSV infrastructure. Second one is maintain, repair, or modernize current existing HSV amenities. Then the third one, and this mainly for you, Pam, and your group, market HSV community in current neighborhood development types and with current amenities. So our philosophy right now is let's market what we have for that one. Let's not say we're got to do. We haven't went out and said we need to build a new whatever type of stuff. But our initial philosophy here would be to let's take what we got, infrastructure, amenities, and market that. Does everybody kind of understand what I'm kind of putting out there? That this would be our starting philosophy for our committee?
The last one, it's the only product we have to sell.
Okay.
So let's market what we've got, because that's, if that's the car you got to sell, you gotta sell Dukes, you gotta sell Dukes, that's your distributorship.
Okay. Any other thoughts on this? Again, I'm trying to give us a starting point for this. And this is, as we develop as a committee, then, for the 2021 budget cycle, in April, we'll have specific recommendations, and then come back in September, October timeframes and kind of give that review of, what's gone on and where, the advice is on that.
One other thing is that when we were meeting about it, we had talked about that possibly another one would be, as a strategic philosophy, is decreasing dependency on assessments. What do you think about that?
Any thoughts on it? I didn't send that one out to decrease dependency on assessments as a philosophy. But he's just,
Yeah.
That would be a philosophy.
that's kind of philosophical type of, for the committee.
But that's an important one even for marketing going forward, because with the goal of decreasing dependency on the assessments, then that would impact really how we market the village, because it would impact who we're marketing to and what we're marketing. And let me give you an example. If it was decided that we could generate additional revenue by going out and actually selling more group type events for here in the village, more golf tournaments, more pickleball tournaments, that type of thing, that's looking at generating revenue beyond assessments, and that really affects how we do our marketing.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I take it that you've made, or there's been an amendment to this motion, which I assume is on the table.
Well, that was that's Nikki brought that kind of.
Yeah, I brought it up based on a conversation.
Is that accepted?
Well, that's why I kind of throw it out.
Did we want to add that to amend the motion? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm just trying to.
Well, we haven't made that would be a fourth one to the actual motion out there.
I make a motion that it be accepted.
Okay.
Well, this is rhetorical probably, but is there any difference between what you just said and just a more positive way of saying it is diversify revenue sources? I tend to like the positive
side.
Diversify revenue, it sounds better.
Okay.
But otherwise, it's
Above
the
and
same
beyond
idea.
assessments?
Yeah, that's the same idea.
Well, if we're going to discuss, I've got to argue that I like, because I think most of the people that I've talked to are afraid that the POA is raising dues, they're spending too much money, etc. And I think we need to tell them that there are a lot of folks out here working very hard to spend their money properly and smart. And by saying we're going to do everything to reduce those funds, I think they need to hear that.
Well, just remember, it's our philosophy.
Yeah, it's our philosophy.
That's our philosophy
I
as a
agree.
committee.
Yeah, and Tom, I understand what you're saying, and in the business world, that would make total sense. But I think for the atmosphere here and for the environment, the assessments are a concern and are an issue, and I would rather that we go ahead and
Tackle it
say
right.
it. Yeah,
Tackle it right
let's
up
be
front.
right up front and say we're looking at ways
Call a spade
so
a spade.
that, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
but what everybody's immediately gonna say is there goes golfing up again.
Well, we didn't say that. We're just saying,
Yeah, but-
it's our, again, Rolland, remember what we're talking, this is our philosophy,
I know.
and to set our philosophy. What staff and the board does with that philosophy, go right in the shredder, nice, but I just
Well, but
think,
your philosophy will shape the recommendations that you make to staff and the board on budget
Yes.
and on any
Yeah.
recommendation that you make. So I think that's appropriate.
that's what I kind of want to get out there. This is our starting point, so that they know where we're coming from as the advisory committee.
I really like this conversation because it just feeds so nicely into what I just mentioned about how important our word choice is.
There's a motion on the table that this be accepted as the board. Do I have a second?
Has the first motion ever been made?
No, we never made the first motion, so we can make the first motion, we don't have to do this one, the amendment there, so. Thank you, Mr. Substitute Parliamentarian. So-
Okay, so
Okay,
basically,
let me-
the motion as amended?
Well, let me just read the whole motion. it'd be different as far.
I appreciate that.
The motion would be, it'd be the CMP strategic budget philosophy for 2020 HSV budget cycle. In lieu of advice and specific CMT recommendations, CMP states the following strategic budget philosophy for the 2020 budget cycle. 1, maintain, repair, and modernize existing HSV infrastructure. 2, maintain, repair, and modernize current existing HSV amenities. 3, market HSV community and current neighborhood development types and with current amenities. 4, decrease dependency on assessments. Do I have a motion for that approval?
Motion made.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the proposed strategic budget philosophy motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, so that's our starting point as far as a motion out there. Okay, it is now halfway through, and I don't want to get hit by Pam. Stephanie can start to set up for the presentations. Next item is the Balboa Golf Course presentation. I know several of us have already heard the Balboa Golf Course presentation at the board. Yeah, those come at the end.
At the end.
Those after your Balboa, we talk about one, and after your neighborhood, we talk about the other. So I know, Clint, I don't think you've seen this presentation, have you?
No.
Okay, Tom, you haven't seen it? I think Pam's seen it, Murray.
Do you guys want me to cut one light?
Saw the
Would that
board
help?
meeting version.
Okay.
Would you flip one of those lights right there? No. There you go. Thank you.
So just for my own personal reference, how many people saw this last night? Quite a few? Okay, all right. I'm going to go through it. And so if you saw it last night, you know that I am not the only presenter. Gary Myers is the expert in golf, and Tom, and I'll try to do my best covering their points, but don't stump me because I may not get it all right. And then as well, Leslie, she covered the actual recommendation and what kind of got us to this point with the board's actions. So the board approved the 2019 enterprise goals in October, and one of those aspects was by June to present a golf course and clubhouse project proposal. In May, they actually also had, during their board retreat, strategic focus discussions, where this was discussed again. For 2020, the strategic focus areas were to improve the financial return on existing assets, including the Balboa neighborhood renovation and sales strategy. So what we covered last night is here. I'm going to skip that. We're going to go a little quicker. So the history of the golf course was built back in 1987. Everything at the golf course is original today. Irrigation, drainage, greens, cart paths are all in their original state. The renovation has been being talked about since 2007 and has been deferred every year. So in the truest sense of the word, when you guys brought us the definition for deferred maintenance, this is it. We're actually been kicking this can down the road for some time. The Balboa Clubhouse was built a year later in 1988. It's just shy of 21,000 square feet, which comparatively speaking, and I want to clarify this because this came out in some questions last night, that anyway, I'm getting off track. Comparatively speaking, just so you have a point of reference for size, Granada and Cortez are in that 8,000 square foot range, plus or minus a little bit. There was an open loop geothermal system installed in 2009. The pipe ran into that pond that you see right there in that picture. It did not work well at all. For those of you who were here when that happened, it was a big giant mess. I'm happy to say I had no input or involvement in that, so don't throw daggers at me. But it was closed in 2015, meaning that we closed the loop in terms of it wasn't pulling fresh water out of that pond. It's still, the pipes are still out in that pond, but it's clean water that's being circulated through that that works much better.
You can take credit for that.
Yeah, that's right. I was around when that happened. That's true. And then the upstairs has actually been closed down since 2013 when the Banana Leaf restaurant left that building. That's when they were operating it as a Mexican restaurant. And again, just kind of point of reference from, I think I want to say it on my notes in front of me right now, but 96 to 2013, we had 5 different independent contractors that came in and out of that building in various points in time to run that restaurant. And what all of them without fail told us that it's inefficient to operate. The kitchen is extremely large. It's not gas. It's an electric kitchen, although we have converted some of the appliances to propane, so there's a little bit of efficiency improvements since it was originally built. And then also it's just really, really big. The upstairs is bigger than the downstairs. So in that 21,000 square feet, about 13,000 of it is up. The remaining is downstairs. So the overhead is pretty high in a space that size for a restaurant. So we've done quite a bit of work between 2007 and 2017. We've made a number of presentations to the board on various different proposals to address the golf course and the clubhouse, none of which ever stuck, primarily because there was no money. But since 2017, when we kind of restarted talking about all of this, we've done quite a bit of work. And you can see all those, and I'm not going to read them specifically, but from surveys to staff work to bringing in consultants and the professional folks who are going to help with writing the RFPs. We created a working group of people within the community. Murray was on that group. So people from the Public Works Committee, people from Recreation Committee, the Golf Committee, right? But really they helped us with some good work kind of during the middle of the year last year to get us on the right track for how do we put the right proposal together. What do we not know that we need to know before we get in front of the community? And one of those was to get a study done of the building, a mechanical study and a structural study to understand what the condition of the building really, really is. So we did that. We held a public open house, which that group supported us in and helped us with. We had a great turnout. We had it at the golf course where you could tour the golf course if you wanted, with staff to tell you the conditions of each hole if you wanted. We had where you could walk all the way through the building. There was no hallway, crevice, closet that was off limits. You could walk in and look at the mechanical rooms, anything you wanted to see, to get a feel for the community, what the conditions were and what the challenges were that we were facing at that time. And then we had stations set up throughout the building where you could leave us notes. We had little sticky notes and leave us your thoughts. What do you want to see here? What do you not want to see here? How do you feel about tearing it down versus rebuilding it? All of those things. And so we got lots of good input from that. After that, Gary had continued to do his work on the golf course. He was very clear on all the details that needed to happen within the course itself, tee to green. And so writing his spec was fairly, I shouldn't say simple, that's a bad statement, but straightforward. It was fairly straightforward. And since receiving the proposal, since I'm going to show you in a moment with how those numbers came back, he's actually been back in contact with the low bid to begin that conversation about how we might value engineer, because the number's a big number. Knew it would be, but it didn't disappoint. It's a big number. And so he's now looking at ways that we can shrink some of those costs and not sacrifice quality of work in the overall project. So, and let me say this: when we did, I didn't mention this last time, and I wanted to clarify this because I think that last bullet is a little bit confusing and it's a bit misleading as well. The estimates that we used on the clubhouse came from the MPE study, the mechanical study, which was done by a company called Stuck and Associates. You probably remember that name, Jody, because Stuck built that clubhouse. They were the original contractor, architect, and engineering firm out of Little Rock who did the project for the Balboa Clubhouse back in 1987. And just so happens that one of those men that worked on that team works for Stuck, also works in our Granada golf course, in the golf shop. And I was visiting with him, and he's like, "Hey, did you know our firm designed?" I was like, "Wow, that's fantastic." So we wrote an RFP, went out to bid, Stuck got the bid to do the structural study, to evaluate the building, MPE, etc., and came back with estimates, price per square footage for varying degrees of renovation based on all kinds of stuff. And so that last statement right there that I have where I talked to East Hardy and Craft & Toll, who are two very reputable firms in Little Rock, engineering and commercial construction firms, basically took the study we got back from Stuck and said, can you verify this also? Can you just take another second? And they did all that for free. They were people that we have relationships with, and so we wanted just another set of eyes. So the golf course is 32 years old. It has frequent breaks in the lines. The irrigation system, I said the golf course, the irrigation system is 32 years old. Poor coverage, it doesn't necessarily hit all of the areas that need to be watered. Drainage issues are continuing to be a problem. Greens are contaminated with Bermuda. Bunkers have drainage issues. You can read all that. I'm not going to read it all. The clubhouse, as I mentioned, that study was done in 2018. I'm happy to report there were no structural deficiencies. The building is sound. As far as it's a metal building, concrete subfloors, concrete in the second floor. We did an asbestos and hazardous materials survey. That was found to find no known contaminants, so there is no asbestos, mold, or mildew in that building, which was good news, very good news. But that doesn't mean we don't have significant problems in the building. We do. Now, is it structural? It's structurally sound. But ADA issues, code and compliance issues, the mechanical systems are, none of which do meet code today, which is expected. It's expected. It's an older building. But primarily the EIFS system, EIFS, what does that stand for? Do you remember? I can't remember. Do you know? I should too. It's an engineered foam system. It's like stucco. It's like stucco, but that's what the entire building is constructed of, the exterior. And it's a tricky product, and it's tricky everywhere it's used. And if you don't install it properly, and if there's any opportunity for moisture to get behind those wall panels, you have really, really big problems, which is what's happened at the Balboa Club. So a lot of water penetration from failing flashing, from penetration of golf balls. The back of that building gets hit a lot. You can look, and we'll show you, there's little pop marks all over. And
I do not understand that.
I will say I have never hit that clubhouse.
But anyway, it's really, really bad, that ecosystem, and it's hard to find people to work on it as well. But it needs to be redone. And as I mentioned, ADA, of course, would have to be brought all up to code with any renovation. The second story decking is bad. It's minor compared to everything else. There's many windows that have lost their seal, just need to be replaced, but the whole back side of that building is windows, so that's a pretty pricey endeavor to even just replace windows. Lots of cosmetic interior renovations that are needed, and you can see the rest there. It's hard to see those pictures, and I had hoped the one in the bottom middle shows all the little holes on the end from golf balls. Some HVAC systems on the back side. And I didn't mention this, the building, while we do have a closed loop geothermal system, we also have traditional heat pump. So it's a combination of systems that are actually heating and cooling that building, which is also not particularly efficient. It's not zoned properly. You know, it's kind of a mismatch of stuff going on in there. But you can see that the middle on the right. It's hard to see, but you can see the bolts where we've actually bolted the EIFS system back in place because the whole panel has fallen off the building. And that's one example, it's all the way around the building, where we've actually line bolted it up in place. So Gary covered this. The typical lifespan for the different elements of a golf course, run anywhere from 5 to 30 years. We've exceeded that in every category on the Balboa Golf Course. We're older than that in every category. Hence the need for the tee to green renovation. He also presented a chart that shows you some comparable costs of renovations in the U.S., and these came out of the Golf Course Builders Association. They have a cost estimating tool, and that's where these numbers came from. So you can see that what a new golf course typically costs today. Again, those are not our markets, so you have to take that into consideration. We aren't California or New York, so we don't have the same costs. We don't have union labor, for an example. We don't have things that drive up costs. But a full 18-hole renovation, just an irrigation renovation, and just a greens renovation, and you can see how those prices are falling around the country. And so based on, again, the usable life of the elements within our golf course, the conditions that we outlined before, these are the reasons that Gary has laid out for why he's recommending a full renovation. There's lots of discussion among the golfing community about the need not to necessarily do it all. The greens are good, why mess with them? We don't need all those bunkers, get rid of a few, and don't even mess with the rest. And there's just a lot of things that people have differing opinions on. Bermuda versus Bend is another really good example of what do we do with the greens. Some of the benefits, that we obviously start fresh, and you have you're starting at ground zero again. You've got another 30 years at least until you're thinking about it. One of the questions last night was, what are we doing about the ones that we haven't renovated yet, since we do have 8? And all of them are approaching that usable life stage. The more we kick this one down the road, we're going to continue to kick the rest of them down the road too. And so, it's, as we've talked about, deferred maintenance is just a trickle down effect, you know, like any asset. But again, you can see all of those reasons there. So these are the bids that he received back. He's pretty proud of this, and I don't blame him. He did a great job preparing the request for proposal. The specs were pretty tight, which means he got pretty good, close bids. You can see they're all within, you know, $100,000 or so of each other. He's comfortable with any one of those three companies, therefore is recommending the low bid. He's either worked with or for or other people who have used these companies. They've all been vetted, and he feels real good about using any of them. And so Heritage Links is being recommended as the vendor that we would go with. Also presented some comparisons to the Cortez golf renovation. If any of you were here when we did that renovation back in 2006, I said it's hard to believe that was 13 years ago. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like yesterday to me, but it's been a while. But that renovation cost was $1.5 million, and the Cortez Clubhouse was $275,000. And there are a lot of reasons why that was so much less expensive than what we're proposing for the Balboa course. Primarily, we had in-house labor. We had a construction team on staff, a whole team. So we did the majority of that work in-house. We didn't do a TV green renovation. We did not do that. We didn't replace all the cart paths. We did some overlay asphalt, I think. Is that right? Okay. Anyway, there are a number of reasons. And then for the clubhouse, it was truly pretty cosmetic, honestly. I think we did a new roof. We put some siding on the exterior of the building. Footprint did not change at all. The exterior really didn't change at all, other than to add some vinyl siding where we had some issues. But it was primarily an interior renovation of cosmetic stuff. It's pretty though. I think it turned out really nice. And so we laid out two different paths for what to do with the clubhouse. And I mentioned this yesterday, and I want to say this clearer today, especially since the press is here. The 8,000 square feet that's recommended is to give you a sense of what it would cost if we rebuilt something in the Granada or Cortez size range. We're not necessarily saying it needs to be 8,000 square feet. In fact, we don't know what it needs to be. We need a path from the board to say we want you to either go down the road of renovation or go down the road of rebuild. Then we re-engage the community. We talk through the design. We talk through the architectural. What do we want to see? Do we want to make sure we have a dance floor? Do we want to make sure we have room for karaoke on Friday nights? Do we want to make sure we can seat 130 people for a good-sized golf tournament at Balboa? Those kinds of things all come into play down the road, regardless of path, whether we renovate or we rebuild. So 8,000 might be the right number. It might not. But anyway, so this first, and so when I say right size, that may or may not have been the best word either, because I think people took some offense to that. I hope I didn't intend for it to be that way. But right size meaning simply, if you were to just build a building today for a golf course, we probably would not go to a 21,000 square foot structure. We would be building something with a restaurant, a golf shop, at whatever size we felt was the right size, but it wouldn't necessarily be 21,000 square feet. And so you can see the cost estimates and based on commercial construction today with commercial kitchen, etc. So demolition at $150,000. You got an architectural and design fee. The new construction furnishings, a contingency, and the total estimate came in at about 2.3. Again, straight up off the cuff estimates that based on the MPE studies, et cetera, not tested against any design. It could be less, it could be slightly more. The contingencies could be way overshot. The architectural fees could be a bit high. That's an industry standard, I can tell you that. Verified that through a number of people, but it doesn't mean that that's what we would pay. Those are just, it's for us to begin planning out of.
In the CMP, they kind of recommended that if you go this route, that the cart maintenance area be the first floor of the replacement building, was that conceived in the, no, okay, just,
There's no recommendation to actually go down that path that was in the CMP, which was, in fact, it was relocating the clubhouse to where the car barns actually are
Right.
today. And I talked with them, I visited with them about why they put that in there, what their thoughts were, and primarily it was thinking that it would happen later, and they wanted to make sure that you didn't tear down a clubhouse while the golf course was being built, because you still needed a clubhouse to function for the golf course if they happened in entirely different times. Yeah. So the second option for the clubhouse was to renovate it. And a lot of people have a lot of emotion about the clubhouse, and I get it, I really do. And I don't have a strong opinion one way or another, to be honest with you. I think the building has got potential, as we said. It's structurally sound. There's no known contaminants. It can be renovated. It's just going to be costly because it's big. That's it. And there's opportunities to do other things with the extra square footage, and based on community input, we've had lots and lots and lots of input on that, from arts to gaming and pool tables and things like that, to office space, to innovation hub, to create lodging actually on that second floor or below. There's been a whole bunch of different thoughts. There's nothing that I can draw any kind of consensus to that says this is a majority of the feeling, but there's certainly lots and lots of thought. And so you can see it, 21,000 square feet, 110 is the low end of what's stuck recommended, and again, verified through Craft and Intel and East Harding as fairly reasonable numbers for a very baseline, bring it up to code, get your ADA right, clean up the outside. Still expensive, but that's not any kind of high-end finishes or changes to walls or structure or layout, nothing like that. It's just get that building back where it needs to be. Is about $110 square foot on up, again, to that 200 square foot range. So to reiterate, these are not tested against a design or a drawing or a concept. It is strictly for us to be able to make a recommendation, give us a path on which way to go. But as you'll notice, even on the low end, it's about $1 million more than tear down and rebuild. So another comparison, the DeSoto Clubhouse cost us about $2.2 million, and that was back in 2016, so several years ago. It is, for comparison's sake, again, 11,000 square feet compared to the 21,000, so it's quite a bit smaller than, in fact, it's half the size, just about half the size.
But how much of the $2.2 million was the asbestos problem?
Actually, very little, because that came, well, no.
That's why when we cracked open those walls.
Yeah, but that was actually paid for out of
by
the
the
insurance claim.
So this doesn't include the insurance then? Okay.
But the vast majority of that 2.2, you don't even see. It was in heating and air, electrical, and plumbing. I mean, it really was. And in fact, the only really exterior renovations that happened during that whole renovation project was the decking on the outside. That was the main thing that happened with the DeSoto Club project. Now the interior has, there's lots of walls moved and lots of
floor.
things happened interior.
Remember the floor?
Oh, and the floor.
The floor.
Yeah. So, but anyways, you can see it. 2.2. Our thought was, again for the other clubhouse was three at a twice the size building. It does, it gives you a sense of where those numbers come into play. So the other thing we thought about was how would we, if we were to do this, how could we capitalize on the improvements to the golf course? And so we started to do some analysis of the neighborhoods around, and what we learned is that there are 111 lots on the Balboa Golf Course that are not built upon yet, that are undeveloped as of today. And if we were to do this project to reach back out to those property owners who are vested in this community via lot purchase and try to figure out how could we incentivize them or understand what would encourage them to move from lot owner to homeowner here. And what are their plans? Maybe they have no plans to ever move here, and in that case, we'd like to know that as well. What can we do then to help you sell your lot to somebody who would be interested in building a home on that? So this just gives you a sense of how that might look were we to be successful in building that out. And obviously that's a long process to get that many houses built, 111 houses built on all those lots. But at the end of the day, if you could do it, it equates to a couple $100,000 in added revenue. So it's just one path Pam for marketing in that area, yeah. So with the closing of the golf course, Tom and Gary and Magdi recognized the operational savings that would be realized in 2020. So basically, these are just operations costs that are associated with each of those functions: food and beverage, golf operations, and golf maintenance. About $340,000, which would be used as a part of the funding model. And then Tom would recommend, I know this is a long presentation. Tom would recommend, with the renovation, that the guest green fees be increased to that of the Granada and Isabella courses, the higher end courses that we have today, not touching the family or the property owner rates, but just, excuse me, in increasing the guest rates. You would be able to, based on the current average of rounds and guest rounds at Balboa, you could reduce the subsidy by about 27%. So the golf course renovation timeline is aggressive, and that is because they would need to kill the turf in order to get started, and to do that you have to do that this year before the grass goes dormant. So he's got a pretty tight window of approval, which is one of the big concerns for the board, I know, and for the public. But that is what it is, so I'll have to make a decision if it makes sense to do it or hold off. But basically, all of these things would happen culminating in a reopening of the golf course May 2021. And then the clubhouse timeline is less aggressive, and we have a lot more work to do because we still don't know what the community and the board wants us to do in terms of tear down or renovation. So we would hope to have a direction from the board in October of this year so that we could then release an RFP for architectural and design, and then start our process of community engagement, talking it through with construction in 2021. It would give us a full year to do that, starting construction in 2021 and opening it in December of 2021 behind the opening of the clubhouse, or behind the opening of the golf course. So this is where Leslie picked it up at our presentation last night, and so the staff is recommending a combination of funding, so between surcharge, capital, and just capital budget, traditional borrowing, member investment, sponsorships. It's a $6.9 million project. It's gonna take more than one way to skin that cat. And this was the plan that she laid out, basically a 5-year budget proposal for how it would be paid for. Surcharges account for about half the total project cost over a 5-year period. So obviously you're front loaded on the borrowing, so your debt service extends for the 5 years. You're borrowing what the surcharge will end up paying back in the 5 years. But it's a graduated surcharge. So the way Leslie's got it worked out is it would be $5 in the first year, $4 in the second year, $3 in the third year, and then reduced down to $2 in year 4 and 5 on the surcharge. A $2.1 million capital budget over the 2 years, 1.1 in 2020, or 1 in 2020, 1.1 million in 2021, and then made up by the sponsorships and golf memberships.
Surcharge isn't something new, I mean.
We've done it every renovation or golf course.
We've used it when I came here,
yeah. Yeah. So then the board has a number of opportunities throughout the process to be, but he's excited about that, I know, aren't you?
Yep.
Yes.
Sure, we're
You
excited.
can see how that goes, yeah. You're probably grateful that you're not on the board.
Yes.
And this is where Diana stepped in last evening and talked about and you can take this if you want, but the board, you take it. You guys did a tour.
Yeah, and, well, I'll preface this. In 21 years ago, 22 years ago, my wife and I bought a lot on the green of number 10, which now has a beautiful home on it. We didn't build on the lot. I had to quit playing golf several years ago and had not been on Balboa until this tour. The cart paths are horrible. I have pictures of where they took some samples of the green were down below the grass, that it's dying. I mean, it's really in bad shape. Some of the tee boxes you're hitting into the woods or straight at the house. I happen to have one on the cart with me, and there must have been 50 or 60 leaks that they had not gotten to that were marked in the irrigation system that they were having to do as they could. But after that tour, if I had been doing that to buy a lot on that golf course, I would not have bought it that day. It's just in that kind of shape. So it's really an eye opener to see how much trouble they have over there.
Well, I know the board is, obviously wants the input from the community. They have a big decision to make, and it's, I don't envy you for it, because it's kind of a no-win either way. I mean, it's a tough decision either way, and not everybody's going to be happy. Just straight up, there's no way you're going to get everybody to agree on either direction. But it is what it is, and at some point, somebody's going to have to make the decision about what to do with it. So that was it. We basically took questions after that, so I'm happy if the committee has any questions, or at least try to answer them.
Any questions, Stephanie? Thank you very much. It's just how many times you've given us
A
this
lot.
week.
Started this week.
Out there. I wanted to, since this is a very, I'll say dynamic situation, but it is, type of thing there. From the CMP Advisory Committee perspective, we haven't had a lot of time to delve into, the recommendations and everything else. But that's why I do feel it's important that we say something about this. Because remember, we have 3 stakeholders. Patricia's not here to give me grief about calling them stakeholders. But we got the board, we owe stuff to the board. We owe stuff to the staff, and we owe stuff to the property owners. They're all our stakeholders. My thought process on this is our first year out, we're not ready to make a specific recommendation on yes or no for this project. We haven't been down into the detail as much as we hope to be in the future, but in the future, this committee would be making a recommendation on a specific project. So since we're not ready to make a specific recommendation, I sent out to you, and you have in front of you, is a proposed motion that the proposed Balboa Golf Course and Clubhouse projects are consistent. And I specifically use that word consistent. It's not for or against, it's consistent with CMP recommendations 5.2.3, 5.5.3, 5.6.1, and you see them there. It talks about utilization of the prioritization tool to make a prioritization decisions on a topic. It's even in the briefing that they went out and used the CMP amenities prioritization tool. If you look at CMP recommendation 5.3, Tom, you talked about it. That's a recommendation in the CMP. And then 5.6.1, continuing developing, reviewing, and implementing 5-year maintenance plans for all courses. So if you look at those 3 CMP recommendations, this proposal, in my mind, is consistent with those CMP recommendations. The second part is that we talked about, and we went over enterprise goals, and we talked about that the HSVPOA enterprise goals and objectives of protect the community-wide property owner value and lifestyle through maintaining current value. That's where this fits in. When you open up, we all have our books, and when you open up that first page, it has the enterprise goals and it has the pillars. So it's consistent with that, and we just approved our budget philosophy that it's consistent with the strategic budget philosophy of maintain, repair, modernize current or existing amenities. So these are, if you look at nowhere in there does it talk about yes, do this, or for or against. But at this point in time, I feel that our committee should say something about the Balboa Golf Course, that it's met these type of requirements. And then, I hate to say it, buddy, then we toss it back over to you guys. Because we've looked at it from the CMP Advisory Committee perspective, that it meets the recommendations that we have in the plan. It's consistent with that. It's consistent with what the board is operating and the POA staff is operating under enterprise goals and objectives, and it's consistent with what our budget philosophy right now of maintaining a current amenity. This is a current amenity that's needed maintenance, and trust me, it's needed maintenance for ever since I've been here. I mean, it was on the out there. So, does anybody have any questions? What I'm kind of, what I've laid out for us to kind of give that, because we at least make our statement about this project or dual projects. So,
Is that you asking for a motion?
well, that's what I'm going to ask for. Would someone make that motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? And everybody understands what it's not for or against. These are all the things that down the road, as we become a more mature committee, then I could see us making for or against type of things out there. But we're not ready at this time. We've been too new committees.
No, but the timing really sucks. Sorry.
Well, I know, but I just think if we don't say anything about this,
Yeah.
we
That's what I,
Yeah, it really does kind of thing. This is hoping when we roll over to next cycle, we get in a little more out there. So, any other comments on this? We got a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor, please say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, so we have made that motion, and we hand it to you, Mr. Board Liaison. That's what the CMP Advisory Committee talks about there. So good luck. I'm just glad I'm not in your shoes, having gone through it with the Soto Clubhouse. So, okay, the next agenda item is the Ciega Neighborhood Project presentation. I think it's a little shorter.
Much quicker.
Okay.
Much
Okay.
quicker. I know, sorry, yeah. This is a bit of old news for most of you, but since we haven't gotten together since we made that presentation and worked on it, well, actually the board didn't act on it, there wasn't a board action needed, but just to give you guys a briefing. So we've been working to try to put together a project for some time, probably about a year and a half even, to try to gather up the properties that we thought would be a successful site for a new housing project. And the goals, these are the decision points that we used in making that. So achieve the enterprise goals, new home construction, our goal is 2,500 over 25 years. Monetize existing underdeveloped and underperforming lots, sell POA on property, align HSV's current market condition with the current market demand, and to minimize our infrastructure liability. Because as you know, we have, you pull one permit, one house, one street, and we are responsible to get all those utilities and roadways installed to that site. So this is the project site. It's the Ciega subdivision, or actually it's not, is it the, I think, yeah, this is Ciega
It's
subdivision.
Ciega.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Right off Ciega Drive.
When did we become responsible for roadways?
What was that year? It was
2011.
11.
When we got the ACC, we picked up roads.
Yep.
Oh, we picked that roads with ACC, because I thought that was.
Yeah, all that was all part of that agreement.
Yeah, there was money involved in the value of property, changing hands and so forth.
But the project site is, it's an undeveloped cul-de-sac. There's no homes on this property. There's none on the properties that you can see in that picture behind it, or following up to that road. It's just off of DeSoto. In fact, right from here, if you go down DeSoto, it's like your second right is Via Heau, and then it's first left. It's really close to the center of the It's just adjacent to the Hernando Trail. All of the homes that will be built in this project are single-family detached, as the plat notes call for. It doesn't encroach in any of CCI's easements. We're not looking to replat. It really is not a pocket neighborhood, so if anybody thinks we're building one, that's not what really this is, not in the truest sense of the word. But it is a concentrated development in an undeveloped site. And we had a builder who was interested in building at that scale, had been working with us for some time. Could we find lots more in mass for him? And this worked out well. He bought all of the properties up front, so we're getting the money for the lot sales.
So he's purchased every lot.
There's 2 that are owned by individuals who don't want to sell. Yep. So 22 will end up being the project, the overall project. Yeah.
But he's purchased all the colored ones.
No, there's 2 of them. That's just that's just the area, minus 2. That's 24 lots. Yeah, there'd be 22 in the site, in the project on my list.
Directly from POA.
Yeah. directly from Village Homes Land. Yeah. So that's actually what's funding the infrastructure installation. And, you know, the good news about that is we're getting all that money up front. In fact, the developer, the builder, even paid a deposit to us to ensure that everything went through, so that we weren't starting infrastructure installation, things like that, before closing all of that stuff. So it's a really, really good thing. Again, we're selling POA on lots. The majority of these lots in this particular area were either not paying assessments owned by us or in the hands of Commissioner of State Lands, or were extremely delinquent. So that's what had been taking some time, was for us to either trade or get the lots in the right state, their title, et cetera, to make sure we had a good project. And we got all that done. Again, he's buying them, and at the end of the day, it generates about $40,000 in new recurring and utility assessments and utility revenues. So it's a good thing. And Renaissance is the builder, Renaissance Homes, who's established builder in Hot Springs Village, been living here for a number of years, has a good reputation. He had been in the Builders Guild member, although this is not being done through the Builders Guild. This is independent of that. He is using Remax as his real estate listing agent with the project, which they are responsible for all marketing. We really were not doing anything other than selling the land and installing infrastructure, which we are responsible for anyway. At the end of the day, the POA is doing what the POA always does. We're just
But
doing
you went
it.
out and purchased the lots.
No, we didn't purchase any.
Most of those came to us.
We
From
traded.
land commissioner.
Some of them were
A lot of them were land. Well, we already owned
a
them
bunch of them.
quite a bit.
So
Of it.
like on the title though, when you see the sales, it shows that it went from land commissioner to the POA.
It would show. Renee does all that, so we'd have to ask her exactly
That's why I
how.
was confused on, because it showed
Some of
John
us,
Smith owned it, went to the land commissioner.
We didn't
Land
purchase
commissioner owned it, went to POA.
Yeah, we didn't purchase any. We either traded or dealt with the Commissioner of State Lands, or deed in lieu of foreclosure in many cases because they were so delinquent.
Because it just showed the amounts on the title, so I was trying to
Yeah. But that's the end of it.
any questions of Stephanie on that? Okay, again, you have before you, we proposed motion about the Seagan Neighborhood Project. The proposed Seagan Neighborhood Development Project is consistent with CMP recommendations 2.3.5, 3-1.4, and 4.11-1. And those are explore the use of the developer impact fees for new development to help pay for infrastructure as a new source of revenue. We've already got some money from the developer or the builder. Identify the target, experience-friendly, secure master developers and investors most likely to develop a product that meets the community needs. And then 4.11 is developer recruitment through personal hands-on approach by researching and vetting those whose work fits the village lifestyle. I would look at any of those. Those are the actual CMP verbiage, and a lot of it, CCI is the developer, but I kind of substitute that, Renaissance Homes is the builder. But those kind of are the recommendations, or the CMP recommendations that it falls under.
So is there any different developer impact fee than just the typical tap-in fee that all the rest of the builders pay?
Just to,
Typical tab.
Okay, so there is no use of a developer impact.
Yeah, so 2.3 is,
It's
yeah.
the same as it always has
Yeah.
been. Okay.
And then as far as the POA enterprise goals and objectives, it supports to strengthen financial health of the village we sold some lots there, and we should be getting some new assessment by creating new value through innovation. And this is the first time since CCI really moved out of here that we've built or had a whole subdivision going in at one time. Cooper built subdivision by subdivision, but we haven't had that since you guys stopped.
and it's not a subdivision. Don't.
Well, I mean,
there's a lot of other lots in that
neighborhood,
subdivision.
yeah,
It's just
neighborhood.
One
Street,
block,
yeah.
one block, basically,
Yeah.
yeah. for you.
But this is the first time we've really, before we were building here, here, and here type of stuff there. So.
Do we have any idea on what the average cost of the house that he plans on building there?
We do. It's he's hopes to be in the mid 200s, up to probably low 3s.
Yeah, he's talking 1,700.
1,700 to 2,400.
I was looking at the recommendations, and I was thinking that 3.1.4 applies. Identify the target experienced financially secure master developer and investors who most likely to develop a product that fits the community's needs.
Is there a motion on the floor?
Well, not yet.
Still
Not yet.
discussing.
I'm just going through, and then the last one, this fits to the marketing, to market current neighborhood development types, because it's no new type of thing, it's single-family houses.
Well, and also to decrease dependency on assessments. Because it is bringing in incremental revenue.
Okay. Okay, that's what is out there. I would ask for a motion, and we can have discussions on that. Do you have a motion for this?
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion now.
I think this is a really cool deal. It's a really innovative way to get around the obligation we have to utilities, and it just, somebody thought of something smart out here.
Thank you.
Now, was it you?
Good job.
I've got it, just asked,
You have
did
me
we
there
not have any
sometime.
subdivisions that already had infrastructure in, that had several lots?
Not that we had enough mass.
Yes.
There's lots. God, there's so many out there. It's just there's not that we had enough concentrated
want them all
mass.
together.
Yeah.
And it's easier for him to construct them too.
Well,
There's-
usually if you're on the same street,
Yeah.
you're fine, whether you're 5 houses on one street or something. I was just curious.
You're right. Any other questions or comments?
Call the question.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, so we'll send that to the POA board, and so we've at least made statements on two issues that they're out there. Okay. Item 9E. For the folks that were at the board meeting and or read the CEO's package that she reported at the last board meeting, there were some potential taskings for our committee. We'll kind of throw them out there to see if we want to take on these taskings or if anybody has any questions out there on it. And we're not going to vote on these today or anything, but just kind of talk about them, and then we'll come back and figure out if we want to jump on these hand grenades. Well, I mean, I want to be, open to you to say, a couple of these they're interesting. So, the first one's the amenity subsidy philosophy slash strategy. We subsidize most of our amenities, but we don't really, the POA's never really had a strategy or a philosophy on our subsidy. We just do it. Is this something that this committee might want to tackle? And we were asked to think about that. So, Tom's brain's just going, oh man, type of stuff there. Again, do we want to, just like we were asked to put out what is deferred maintenance, do we want to put out something on an amenity subsidy philosophy? So any questions on that? So think about that. It'll be on the agenda next time, and we'll make a decision, yea or nay, next time.
So next time is when we discuss it.
Well, no, you can discuss it now. I mean,
Well, I'm for it. I mean, we're commenting on everything else. We're the voice of the people. People are coming here and they're telling us what they think, and we're listening.
okay.
And if they want, if there's any criticism, well, the board doesn't communicate. Well, we're helping the board, and we're a place where people can come in and talk to us. So, yeah, I think if the board is asking absolutely, let's help them out.
Yeah, go ahead, Rolland.
I'm sorry, did that? You finished?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm wondering what this consists of. Is this saying we're going to subsidize this and not this, and so? But
Well,
we're
it
not
would be-
subsidizing means it has to pay us in a way.
Well, it would be you subsidize, that's what would be the philosophy? Just like we did a philosophy right now on our, strategic budget, we subsidize amenities at a percentage, and that's it. If X percentage can't do that, that could be a philosophy. Pickleball gets subsidized X amount of dollars, golf gets X amount percent, and this percent, or does everything across the board get X percent subsidy, and they have to buy their way there.
Make up the rest with fees or something like that. Is that what-
Yeah, I mean, just think about that. That would be kind of a thought process. We know that golf is always going to be, just because its sheer size is going to be, but maybe you say you only subsidize 25% of the golf or whatever. Use that, and don't, that's kind of just throwing out a number. Or you subsidize pickleball at 25, everything's 25%. What's the philosophy?
Don't say this.
If we're going to talk about that as a philosophy and stuff, because is there some one place where we could see what the subsidies look like now?
Is there someone who
Is there
could
some
come-
policy already?
Expertise,
Is
who
there-
has expertise in that area, who could give us a
Is there a
education?
subsidy report somewhere?
Well, I mean, the budget.
The budget.
tells
The
you
budget
subsidy
gives it.
every
But you have
single-
you have to pick it out of each.
Well, is this something we could ask Liz to come in and talk to us
We
about?
absolutely could.
So maybe Liz would be the one to kind of give us, we invite her in October, before we jump on this hand grenade, know what we're dealing with out there. But I was asked to say, hey, this
Because
is,
I'd like to know what we are subsidizing and to what extent, very specifically.
pretty much,
It's pretty much in the monthly financials.
yeah.
It's there, you have to.
Okay,
I
so,
don't dig
some of
through
it
the
out.
monthly.
We can have her come in.
and I would ask you, as you think about this now, what questions do you want her to answer? So we could send them to Liz and say, hey, here's what we're going to kind of throw out there too as questions. So we'll put it on for next, in October out there. Okay, the next one that was out there was a facility condition indexing tool. And Murray, this is kind of your area there. Is this something that, like I said, we were asked to define deferred maintenance. Is this something we might want to tackle? And this is development, because I don't think public services, public works, public utilities has anything like this right now, do they?
Not that I know of.
So,
The word facility can mean a whole bunch of different things. Is this, what it was specifically
Buildings.
referring to?
Buildings,
That's
yeah.
what I was afraid
yeah.
of.
So again, this was one that was put out there as potential that we could tackle.
Is Public Works back inspecting buildings again? In conjunction with.
As of the first of the year with the staff reorganization, so it's still, the buildings is something fairly new to most of us who were on the committee previously. So this may be a good way to get us a little more engaged in that piece of
Okay.
or those assets.
There is some literature on that from when we did it. I'll get you a look at that.
Question here, isn't an indexing tool something that engineers would generally use? I can see us giving, assisting with philosophies, but they're asking about a facility condition indexing tool. I don't see how we could help in that regard.
That's why we were asked to bring this forward to see if this is something that.
We need to research some of that. I know Liz has
Yeah.
done some looking into that, but I mean, it's similar to like our amenities prioritization tool that we have as a part of the comprehensive master plan. It's something that we as staff can use to make decisions from. So it can be as simple as like, if you answer yes to all these things, is it past this age? Is it, have you invested X number of dollars over the course of the last 5 years in maintenance? Does that trigger the next question? Those kinds of things that help us just evaluate and determine where do we spend money.
Yeah, rather than me just say yes or no here, our next meeting is next Thursday,
Okay.
ours being public services.
Yeah.
I'll run it by the committee. And Clint, just for your information, the committee's made up of 9 previous professional engineers.
Great.
Of all different disciplines.
I was just thinking literally as a tool.
Right,
You know,
and if we need help, we know who to go,
Well,
firms to go contact.
Scope is one of the things that's big in this. Before, it was pretty much a cosmetic. We were told we couldn't touch electrical, we couldn't touch plumbing, and we couldn't touch HVAC, and we couldn't go on roofs. So it was pretty much a cosmetic, so it's a big
So you're
step.
saying you want back on the committee?
Yeah, he's saying that.
I might. But there could be a lot to this, whether you're talking about physical condition or whether you're talking about, and then when personnel came in, they picked up a lot of things like GFIs and things like that we never looked at because we didn't look at electrical.
But the other good thing is,
And
those of us
ADA
on the committee know our limitations
Yeah.
and know when to go get experts to do.
That's going to be it's a big job.
Oh, yeah, well, that's why it was proposed, it was out there and said, well, we'll ask the question and get some feedback, and I'll wait for your feedback, Murray, and we can bring it back around in October to say, is this something we want to tackle?
Well, and I think that-
And how we, what specifically, what do we want to tackle, too?
With the building manager, we'd probably have better information.
Yeah.
We're about to discuss the amenity prioritization tool, and I think that where we as an advisory committee can come into it is I've taken a look at that particular tool, and if that is a tool that we're going to use, I think that there's some recommendations, changes that we could recommend that would make it better. From a strategic point of view, anything that we can help them to get data-driven decision support matrix, something in there to help to improve our decision-making, make it more objective versus subjective, more defensible. Why did you make the decision that you made? Well, you know, we ran the numbers. It's not like we just flipped a coin and said, yep, this is the one, this is the support that for the decisions.
You're exactly right, and I mean, I can use the last night as an example. Questions that came out was, you know, well, we're spending all this money here, what are you going to do about this building? Big Coronado Center. It's a great question.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about the Pond Center? When it starts to need renovation, what are we going to do about the 19th hole building and the soda golf shop that's sitting down there empty right now? You know, I mean, we have hundreds of buildings. People don't realize, hundreds of buildings. Pardon?
96
buildings.
Okay, 96. Okay, there's a bunch of buildings out there. Is that including like even the pump houses and golf
That
maintenance?
included pump houses and halfway houses.
Okay, but there's a bunch, and they cost a lot of money, and you're right, we need to know which one's the next in line. It may not be just an age question, it may not just be that, maybe other things that we need to evaluate in that tool.
So it may not be just focusing on one tool, but making recommendations for tools to help decision support. That's what I was thinking that we
That
could.
makes sense.
Okay, so we'll think about this, and as we come back around, see, you know, which ones we want to tackle. We've been asked to look at these, and I have not accepted any taskings on these three. We were just asked, and
Could you tell us a little bit more about the amenity prioritization tool? What are they thinking?
well, have you looked at it back here? Look in the,
It's in your master plan.
it's in the master plan. And just like Nikki said, there's some things in there, you can never go negative or something?
There's only one word, it's a negative, so it's the questions and
Yeah.
the weighting is biased for favorable decision.
Favorable
And I
decision.
think that we should sway it to minimize bias or eliminate bias and make it more neutral. So when the prioritization goes through, if you're actually going to use it, it's because you started in neutral, that we're not saying, we're not automatically biasing you to a yes decision, where some of the questions are leaning that way.
If you go back, yeah, that was one of the big things you just look, you know, you can score really high, but, you know, but yeah, take a look at it back there. 'Cause
Page 307.
It's sitting there, and
Well,
I mean,
actually,
they tried to,
301 through 303.
Well, they're all in there.
they're all, but
But-
you can
but
you can go through them and
amenities-
see what it's saying. It allows you to say, should we be doing this?
Amenity is 305 through 309, 239.
Amenity, and then, I was looking, and
That's
that's
the-
amenity, I was actually thinking
Yeah.
the,
But see, that's what, that tool is what they ran and said, yeah, we need to do something about the Belleville Clubhouse.
Sorry.
Yep, thanks, Mark. Okay.
a lot of people are leaving, so I think we better adjourn this.
Okay, so those three, okay, now, anything else from the,
One thing, at some point, maybe I missed it, we need to define pocket neighborhoods. It's what one really is, because I've been guilty of using it on their development and a lot of other things, and if this saying it isn't a
There's not
pocket.
a real definition.
Yeah.
I think when we're talking about using accurate words, we need to come up with something. Pocket neighborhood.
well, it was really kind of, you know, we were sitting at the board meeting, one of the board members called the Siega neighborhood a pocket neighborhood, and I was kind of going, okay, is it, you know, is it or isn't it?
I mean, there's debate among the industry too, you know, pocket or cottage court, or, I mean, there's all kinds of different ways to call it. But I will come up with it.
We need that, again, accurate language.
to do that.
Tom, you got anything? You're all good in notes, Clint? Pam, everybody's left you over there. I don't know what you did, but.
Must have been the first thing I wore. Oh, wait, I'm not wearing it.
Stephanie? Okay, going around the room, starting in the corner, Any questions or comments you have? Steve, anything?
No, sir.
Joe or Cheryl?
I do.
Okay.
Has Renaissance actually closed on the sale of the lots? It's not a totally done deal?
We have contract.
It's not
It's
signed?
a sign, no, it's a signed.
Oh, it is signed?
Oh, yeah. It's not closed yet, but yes,
Okay,
it's a
okay.
signed contract.
Okay, and how much are the lots selling for?
Cannot tell you that until this contract is closed, but it
When
will
will
be
the
public.
contract-
I don't have the closing date. I don't know the closing date, but it's public record. I mean, definitely you can know. I just legally, we can't talk about it until it closes. Real estate law legal.
Okay, thank you.
So just keep on, calling up your tool or your Saline County, tool or whatever.
Well, I mean, as soon as it closes, I'll tell you. I mean, I will release it. We just can't until.
You have my email?
I'm sure we do. Yeah.
Anything else, Cheryl?
No.
Janet?
I think you may have a problem with some of the golfers on your surcharge. The history of the surcharge was that the first time they did that, it stayed and it was
Right.
rolled into the thing.
You're right.
And that will be a problem, I think.
I think that's a concern.
That's
Exactly
And
right.
I think when you brought up about the lots back in 12 that didn't work, the CPOA was, I can attest to that because I offered to buy both lots next to my house. And they said, submit a bid. I submitted a bid, nothing was done. Finally, I asked them, what's going on? They said, well, we have a slight problem, but we'll be in touch with you on it. That was in 12. This is in 19.
Oh, nobody got back to you?
No.
And see, that was one of those tactical moves that, it was, and I don't say it was to generate cash, but it was to generate some cash because that was the way Scott Randall had an idea and said, generate cash.
I have a question too on these communities that you have been proposed, and also when we had the show here about the pocket neighborhoods or row houses, whatever you want to call it. Have they considered the infrastructure as far as water and sewer will support that? Since when Cooper laid this out, he didn't lay it out for tight communities. He laid it out for individual homes spread out. And I wondered if they haven't considered that would be an expensive redo.
And that's one of the things we've kind of, from this committee standpoint, and you were not at subcommittee meetings earlier today because they dealt with town center, kind of more of those type of things. Those are being pushed off. And I think the POA is even saying, the town center, everything, all these things, and that density. And that's why we have made our statement to market what our neighborhoods are like today. It's not to go out there and market that yet because we don't, from the CMP AC committee, we don't have enough,
And at this moment in time, sir, the lot, all of the lots here are platted single-family residential detached homes. So we don't actually have land in which to build that sort of a
and
product.
that's something we talked about at a previous CMP meeting was, there's a process. Yes, you can replat, but it's a three-step process. The POA can do it, then CCI needs to be involved in it because there's easement issues, and guess what? Then the subdivision needs to be involved in it to approve the replatting. So
100%.
100%. So it's a three-step process, and we learned that. As we did our research here, and say, all right, that's out there.
Through the CMP, and honestly, that document I handed out to you guys today has similar metrics and data to support, but what it brought out was that we don't have a product that is selling in other communities that we compete with. And so should we consider it? We should consider it. Does that mean we can? We may not be able to, but it does mean that there are people out there buying in retirement communities and communities like ours that want that type of product, and we just don't have it to sell.
We don't have it to sell.
Yeah, I'm well acquainted with one of those that they showed in the pictures.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, Newtown in St. Charles, Missouri. I'm well aware of that one.
Oh, okay.
But if I may, when we did the water plant, one of the other things the engineer did was a model of the water system.
Right.
And so if the topic comes up, we can model it and see, because that's one of the questions we asked. Okay, we got 50% more capacity. We got the capacity in the system. turned out we do, but we've got plenty of capacity right now, but we can model that if we had to.
And he may even think of lines in the actually buried, right? Do we have the right size pipe to
Right.
support
Well,
a
that's the
bigger?
whole point.
That's the
Yeah.
big thing.
That's what the model is, takes
Okay.
each side, it takes them down to
And I'm more worried about not the water going out, but it's the water that goes back in. Because that's a smellier issue. Ma'am, anything?
No, thank you.
Marcy, always save it for last, because I know you have questions, so.
I'm fine, thank you.
No questions.
I've got something to ask all of y'all, the visitors here. Please, we are working very hard to be your voice. Please keep coming. Please tell your friends and neighbors. There are a lot of rumors out there that we hear on Nextdoor and these people that write these letters. Tell them that we're working hard and we're your voice. And you got to help us, because otherwise we're not doing ourselves harm when we spread misrepresentations and false statements. It hurts all of our real estate. It hurts us all. It makes people not want to come here, and that has to stop.
Marcy?
I was just wondering, with the Balboa being such a big endeavor, why was the presentation last night an hour and 10 minutes? There were so many, there were lots of chairs set up, so you expected lots of people. They showed up, and there were at least 20 people or more with their hands up, and you guys just shut everything down, and people picked up chairs, and I'm just saying to you, that's what brought this question up is that
She's asking me, but I actually don't know.
Because
I don't know
that
what the time
is,
constraint was.
if that was, if you think about it, because there are people talking about the fact that, okay, what are our opportunities to actually voice our opinion? Some people say letters, well, and then they say the board doesn't respond. Okay, so that's always an issue. Then I get 3 minutes, if I get 3 minutes at a board meeting, but then you have issues with, decorum, or somebody doesn't like the question or the statement, and then that blows up into, okay, so if I don't get to say if I don't get a response from the board, or I don't get or why do we even have just 3 minutes? And I can't ask a question at a board meeting, no one answers it, you can only make a statement.
I will say that at last night's presentation, none of the panel board, I shouldn't say none because I can't swear to that, but the vast majority of us stayed as long as anybody wanted to walk up and ask a
Oh,
question.
no, but
I don't
I'm
think
saying
anybody-
with the microphone, and I was in the back,
Yeah.
like 5 rows.
Yeah.
And there were so many people still with their hand up, and it was such a big topic, and it was so important. Why would anybody just say we're going to do this for an hour? The presentation and the questions.
Yeah, I don't have
It was
Well,
an hour and 10
Marcy, that
minutes.
kind of relates to just as, what our motions that we made, one of the things, we haven't had all that time to do our due diligence as we should be for futures, and the CMP, because we're a new committee. But as we start maturing as a committee, we should be doing our due diligence too, so. I just kind of put that out there. Yeah, I understand, and I think the board members and buddies had to take off. They're going to have to do some due diligence, and I'm sure they're hearing from. I'm sure they're hearing from the
But to
public.
be
If
clear,
that was
Marcy,
the only,
but
if that was the only public,
Yeah.
if that was, are you going to have more of those before you make a decision? No.
I don't
The
know.
board meeting
I didn't
is
say no. I
next
did not
week.
say no. I
No,
don't.
I'm
I
just
don't
saying
know.
the board meeting's next week. So before you're asking the board to make a decision, that was really the only
Well, like I said, to be fair,
And it was an
everybody
hour and
had an
10
opportunity
minutes.
to ask their question. They just didn't necessarily have an opportunity at the mic, right? So I hear what you're saying. And nobody wasn't able to ask a board member or staff their question because we stayed as long as anybody wanted to talk. But you're right. Did not everybody have a chance at the mic? I can't
Well, it
argue
helps
with
other
that.
people, to hear
understand.
the
Yeah.
answers, questions that
Yeah.
they may not have asked.
I hear you.
And I just said,
But Marcy has a good point too, and that's why we have a communications committee is to figure out how to better communicate as a village with one another. And whether that's the POA communicating with the residents communicating with the POA or the staff. I mean, you had that great diagram at one point about how the communication has to flow. And it's something that we really, really need to work on.
We had the pickleball issue and the pool issue. There were round tables.
We had roundtables on Balboa.
And this time, nothing
Yeah.
for Balboa.
Actually, we've done so much.
We
on
have,
Balboa.
because I ran 3 of them. I know about that.
We have done so much community input on
But it's
Balboa,
being
but
kicked down the road so far that,
it got kicked down the road last time for the same reason. Not
you know,
enough
and
input.
then there was the proposal that it be
Or
a
not
art
of
center.
consensus,
And
really.
not enough consensus, but I'm telling, I mean, I'm.
Well, and that was also the
It's very
fact
difficult
that,
to get
Okay, you guys can beat
Yeah.
this one to death, and it's
Yeah.
kind of outside
I'm
the
just
scene.
saying.
I know, we're trying to be as open as we
big,
can on this.
big
Yeah.
thing,
Big thing.
fast decision, an hour and 10 minutes per question, you know.
I think it seems like past time, but as the history of this shows, it's been something that's been in the works for a long time. I mean, this last piece does seem a little fast comparatively, but when you put it in the whole perspective, this is something that people, we're kind of in between a rock and a hard place, or at least the staff and the board is in that position, because if we say nothing, there's a group of people who say, why, we've been talking to you for years to do this, but if we do it now, they go, whoa, why are you going so fast? So there's just no way to make everybody happy.
Come in another year then.
Maybe another year, that's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of the decision. Buddy gets paid the big bucks. Remember, Marcy, you remember getting that paycheck on the board?
Big bucks.
Every month when you sit there and wait for that paycheck to come in and go, boy, it didn't come in this month,
Yep.
So.
You get paid zero, you get a raise.
We're all volunteers.
Okay, with that, thank you, folks, and our next meeting is October.